welcome back to Red vs. Blue episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 43, Make Your Time. In the time gap between episodes, O'Malley was now standing with Lopez on the cliff, having captured Tex, evil laughing and taunting that the Reds and Blues had fallen right into his hand, making a cliché speech about how they had just realized the folly of their follies, warning them to prepare for an oblivion that they could not prepare for. Sarge, Simmons, Tucker, Donut, and Caboose had all met up in one spot from which they could see the cliff, with Simmons informing O'Malley confidently that since the Reds and Blues were working together now, O'Malley couldn't possibly hope to win. O'Malley rebuttals, calling the Reds and Blues fools, confidently informing them that Lopez, who he called his metallic friend, was the only ally he needed. He then proceeded to instruct Lopez to activate his new weather control routines, which was the upgrade he had mentioned back in episode 41. Lopez simply responds, okay, still speaking in Spanish, as lightning shoots out of him and mysterious symbols materialize, oranges, yellow, and tall, mystic and ancient, around him. Simmons questions if the symbols are a sign of ancient technology, interested in how O'Malley acquired it if so, with Doc denying, claiming he used to draw them on his binder during study hall, excited that he actually got to use them for this new invention, stating how cool they were, asking the Reds and Blues if they agreed. O'Malley demanded Doc to shut up once again, with Sarge, stating in anger, great Samson's back hair, complaining that O'Malley found his secret weapon, revealing that he was the one who originally developed the weather control device in Lopez, but he couldn't find the one final ingredient he needed to complete it, calling it a critical piece of technology. O'Malley agreed with the sentiment that the technology was critical, evil laughing, but now he had located it, being D-batteries. The universe would be his. Tucker questioned Sarge in disbelief if the critical tech was really D-batteries, baffled at how he couldn't find any. Sarge defended himself, stating that he could only find them at gas stations, but adding that they were too darn expensive there. Just then, Church and Griff arrived after making their way from the cell, with Church immediately questioning what's going on, as he takes a place standing between Caboose and Donut. Sarge asks him if he wants the long explanation or the short version, but doesn't give him a choice, as he goes straight to explaining that Church had a 50-megaton bomb in his gut, and Lopez was about to kill them all. With Simmons, calling Sarge sir to still be a kiss-ass, politely correcting him it was a 10-megaton bomb. Church, obviously still clueless from that vague explanation, clarifies that it made no sense, and asks for the long version, assuming that was the short version. Tucker clarifies, however, that that was the long version, stating the short version was simply that they were boned. Simmons then asks Griff if he's okay, with Griff responding that he's done hard time, claiming he was not the man Simmons knew, still exaggerating his prison life. Simmons calls him out on this, questioning what he meant by hard time, revealing the Reds and Blues were only separated for 5 hours. Griff countered that time moves slower on the inside, perhaps fully believing his own extreme prisoner facade now, stating that it felt more like 7 or 8 hours to him, genuinely thinking that was a huge difference. This conversation was interrupted by O'Malley firing his rocket launcher repeatedly at the Reds and Blues, stating the Reds and Blues would never defeat him, and oblivion was at hand, calling them fools as they all scattered everywhere to avoid the blast, and Sarge ducked behind a rock. Simmons, now hiding behind a tree, informed Sarge that he had an idea, but adding that it required Sarge to distract O'Malley. Sarge shouted, will do, accepting Simmons' request with strangely little reluctance. This was because he intended to pass the job on to Griff, who had since joined him behind the rock. Sarge admits to Griff that he's never believed in him at any moment, which Griff obviously knew. But Sarge added that there was a way for Griff to prove himself to him. Griff questions what he can do, with Sarge instructing him to run right for O'Malley, hoping Griff would actually do it so he didn't have to. Griff questions what he should do when he gets to him, suggesting shanking him with a shiv, with Sarge alternatively suggesting that Griff get blown up by O'Malley's rocket launcher and attempt to clog the barrels of it with his scattered limbs and guts. Griff responds by questioning if Sarge was kidding, in disbelief that even Sarge would make such a ridiculous suggestion even towards him. Sarge defends his suggestion, claiming that he knew it was a remote chance, but it was worth a shot, obviously not taking Griff's safety into consideration. During Griff and Sarge's conversation, O'Malley, still repeating that oblivion was at hand while evil laughing, had walked up to the rock, pointing his rocket launcher directly at Griff and Sarge, as Doc warned them to cover their ears, stating it was really loud. Griff screamed out, this is it, in pure panic, believing he was about to die. But just then, Simmons called out to O'Malley, warning him not so fast, diverting O'Malley's attention away from Griff and Sarge, as O'Malley, Griff, and Sarge would look towards him. Simmons continued, threatening that although the Reds and Blues may not be able to stop him, he knew some people who could. On cue, a teleporter that Simmons must have used the distraction time of Sarge and Griff's conversation to properly set up, opens up to Battle Creek, leaving all the Red and Blue soldiers from there to run through, screaming woohoo, one of them exclaiming in happiness, believing they'd found a new level, believing this to still be more of a Halo-like game like Battle Creek. Simmons then continues on with his plan, questioning the Red and Blue soldiers if they want their flag, getting their attention before lying that O'Malley was the one who added as the camera zoomed in on O'Malley's face, knowing it would cause them to attack him, which it certainly did, as the selfish soldier began a battle cry speech to the other soldiers that it was time for their crusade to begin, stating their hour of glory was at hand, and demanding that anyone who stands against them be washed away by their divine light. The soldiers then all begin firing their guns at O'Malley, endlessly, absolutely pummeling him, keeping him away from the Reds and Blues as he demanded the overwhelming soldiers to get away from him and to get out of his space repeatedly, letting out cries of ow and ow. With O'Malley preoccupied, Simmons reminded Sarge that they needed to disarm Church's bomb now, with Sarge agreeing as Church got struck by lightning from Lopez's weather device, causing him to gasp out a wah in literal shock. Sarge still walks up to Church, instructing him to hold still, calling him son, not literal. Sarge then began kneeling, informing Church that disarming should just take a second. Church, reminded by Sarge's kneeling of Tucker flipping a switch, questions bitterly if Sarge ever installs any features on his robots above the waist. Sarge then panics as he examined the detonator, shockingly revealing that the last lightning bolt that struck Church must have fused it, so there was now no way to turn it off. Simmons questioned if Sarge could just turn it off manually, with Sarge denying, claiming he designed it specifically so he could never defuse it. Griff obviously questioned why Sarge would do that, with Sarge reasoning that it was in case he ever fell into the wrong hands and was brainwashed by the Blues to help them. Simmons complimented Sarge's idea, stating, nice thinking, sir, being the kiss-ass that he was, with Griff annoyedly calling Simmons out on this, complaining that Simmons felt the need to get one more ass kiss in before they all died, fully believing that's what was going to happen. Meanwhile, O'Malley had been knocked down to his stomach by the soldiers and was getting humped by them, much to the joy of the soldiers who were all trying to participate, with one having to plead for a tried humping as they laughed and taunted take that, and to the dismay of O'Malley who questioned what they were doing, stating it was disgusting and claiming he was being violated. Meanwhile, Tucker had grabbed hold of O'Malley's rocket launcher since he had dropped it while being attacked. He held it up, pointing it at Church, getting his attention, hesitantly saying there was only one thing he could do, knowing the explosion was imminent, as Simmons screamed with panic that there was only 20 seconds left. Church reacted by bitterly questioning what the hell Tucker was doing, with Tucker clarifying defensively that if he blew him up with the rocket launcher before the bomb went off, there was at least a small chance that the rest of the Reds and Blues could survive. Church weakly rebuttals that the rocket would kill him, which everyone was already well aware of, as Simmons warned that there was only 10 seconds remaining on the bomb. Griff, in peak panic mode, countered to Church that he was going to die anyway when the bomb went off, insinuating Church should sacrifice himself for the others, but Church bitterly responded that misery loves company, implying he wanted everyone to die with him. As Simmons issued the 5-second warning, Tucker made his final decision, apologizing to Church, with Church only responding bitterly how much the situation blew and how much the Reds and Blues sucked. Before Tucker could fire the cannon, however, it was suddenly shot from his hand by a sniper rifle, leading Tucker to angrily question what the hell just happened. Wyoming then revealed himself standing on a cliff as the shooter, sarcastically apologizing to Tucker, begging he always gets his man, telling him to say goodbye as he was intending to kill him. However, it appeared Wyoming wouldn't be able to, as the bomb started beeping, with Simmons, after sarcastically stating he hated to interrupt, confirming the bomb was at 0 seconds. Tucker simply said, "Uh-oh," as the bomb made a final phone dialing noise, to Church's surprise, who could only say a partial final, "son of a bitch," before the bomb exploded massively, destroying the Ringworld halo. Hearing a massive ringing in their ears, the Reds and Blues appeared to be floating around in a black and white optical illusion circle, perhaps signifying the confusion of the bomb explosion, seemingly nothing space in deep space, having been blown off of Sidewinder. Sarge was the first one to speak, stating that the bomb must have gone off, followed by Griff questioning where they were and if they were dead. Questions on everyone's mind. Caboose responded unhelpfully simply they didn't want to be dead, but he wanted to be alive or a cowboy, as if the two were mutually exclusive, as multiple clocks appeared floating around in the optical illusion swirl, one being pink and mobile, one being a classical wood clock, and one being a clock in a red house-shaped frame with white outlines. Donut then speaks up, stating his dissatisfaction with being dead with a simple "oh man," complaining that tomorrow was all-you-could-eat day at the chow hall, and he wanted to eat all that he could. Although that probably wouldn't have been achievable anyway, being nowhere near a chow hall even if they were back at Blood Gulch. Sarge then clarified to the others that they were not dead, calling them idiots and beginning to suggest, likely due to the clocks, that they were stuck in a temporal loop, before cutting himself off as the illusion background changed to normal stars in space, shouting "Whoa-no," as he realized they were coming up on something, warning everyone to brace for impact, stating, "Heads up, boys," as the screen turned white. Tucker awakes on a new planet, which has a brown sky, tall gray rocks, and thick brown rocks along with sand, grunting and questioning what happened as he looks up and sees the sky, which is then immediately partially blocked by Donut's face, who calls attention to the fact that Tucker is awake, in surprise, implying it's been a while. Griff simply questions why he doesn't get a laser gun, ignoring Donut, which leads Simmons to tell Griff to shut up. Donut, annoyed that they didn't hear him, reiterates that Tucker was awake, which Simmons finally hears, questioning "huh?" in disbelief before repeating "hey" multiple times, instructing Tucker cautiously to take it easy, confirming that he's been out a long time. Griff then sarcastically joked that he thought he was lazy, insinuating Tucker was even lazier for how long he was laying there. Tucker then stood up, still grunting in both exhaustion and confusion, questioning who everyone was. This led Donut to assumedly state that Tucker had amnesia, assuring Tucker to not worry and that he was safe. Unnecessarily, in fact likely making things worse, adding that they were the Reds, his mortal enemies. With even Donut himself admitting that that didn't sound right, realizing he probably shouldn't have said that. Caboose then reveals himself, excitedly repeating Tucker's name and stating how glad he was that he was alive. Tucker reacted in surprise, shouting Caboose's name before stating how he was still so dumb but looked so different. Tucker was right. Everyone, including himself, did look different, as they all had new armor and the episodes were now filmed in Halo 2. Caboose then confirmed that he did look different, clarifying that the reason why was because the Reds and Blues were now in the future, which he added was a time where things were very shiny. Tucker responded in obvious disbelief, claiming he couldn't fucking wait to hear Caboose's explanation, rightfully assuming it was just more of his nonsense. Sarge then revealed himself, however, jumping down from higher ground, agreeing with Caboose as Sarge stated that it was obvious that the power from the bomb, which he called Bomb 21, combined with the power of Lopez's weather machine to create an explosion so large that it created a temporal rift in time, further trying to state that the rift cascaded through something, before getting cut off by Tucker, who simply responded by repeating, wait a second, explaining that he obviously didn't understand what Sarge was talking about. This led Donut, who must have shared the same beliefs as Caboose and Sarge, to vaguely ask if they could do the skit now, with Caboose shouting yeah in agreement, and Simmons also agreeing, though slightly less enthusiastic. Griff, however, declined, complaining that he didn't want to do that dumb skit, implying that Donut must have told everyone else about the skit already. This actually leads Sarge to accept Donut's request, though, admitting he only agreed because he wanted Griff to be miserable, further adding that he missed the old days as he got choked up. Donut responded, great, instructing everyone to take their places as he said his introduction in a movie narrator voice, stating, "The Red vs. Blue Players present a Franklin Donut play, written and directed by Franklin Donut, in association with Lettuce Red Danish Productions." Sarge, already regretting this, as he was annoyed by Donut's intro voice, begged Donut if they could just start. Donut obliges, stating action, as a red and blue curtain appears on the screen, pulling away and revealing Donut, Sarge, Simmons, and Griff, who were now in character as the play had begun. Simmons started by greeting a traveler, who was presumably the audience, being only Tucker, and revealing that he and 3 people beside him represent the timeline. Sarge stated he represented the past, but likely chosen for the role due to his apparent age of around 50, where things cost less, and people saw the value of a hard day's work, but they only lived to be 28 years old. Simmons stated that he was from the future, where people had no morals and no emotions, but they had a bunch of kick-ass gadgets. Griff stated he was the present, which sucks, had nothing cool, and also had no morals. And finally Donut, still talking in his movie theater narration voice, stated he was the helpful narrator, which he added was a faceless voice used by poor writers. Tucker countered that Donut had a face though, at least he thought, with Donut responding for him to shut up, calling him the audience and accusing him he was ruining his play. Donut then continued after addressing the interruption, officially starting the play now that the introductions were done, which he began by stating in the narrator voice that one day everything was well in the timeline, until something happened in the present. Donut was then cut off by Griff, who complained, questioning why bad stuff always had to happen in the present, with Donut annoyedly answering it was because that's when people actually did stuff, and Sarge annoyedly complaining for Griff to quit his bitching, insinuating that the past was worse, since they had atrocities and a crapload of wars that everyone thought was important, and at the time, but were now seen as trivial and stupid, not specifying which wars he was talking about. Simmons agreed with Sarge that Griff should quit his bitching, but didn't agree that Sarge had it the worst, reasoning that he had the apocalypse, being the future, arguing that was way worse than anything Sarge or Griff had to deal with, calling them dipshits, before quickly apologizing to Sarge for the insult, when he looked at him questionably, claiming it was in character, still wanting to be a kiss-ass. Sarge, genuinely believing this, congratulated Simmons on the well-done performance, stating bravo. Donut then resumed the play, reiterating in his narrator voice that one day, something terrible happened in the present as Caboose came on screen and stupidly began reading his whole script, including the actions, as opposed to just the lines, stating, enter stage left, before in character, as Tucker introducing himself as Stupid Private Tucker, stating that he was now going to set off a big bomb and totally mess things up for everyone because he was stupid, indicating that this play was reenacting when the bomb went off as its main event in the present. Caboose then stupidly stated another action while doing it, as he turned around to Griff, and in character greeted the present, declaring he was going to set off a bomb in him. Griff, in character, pleaded stupid Private Tucker not to do that, explaining it might kill him, leading Caboose to state one more action, thinks about this for a moment, before Donut finally steps in annoyance, begging Caboose to stop reading his stage directions. Caboose bitterly counters that Donut simply told him that he was supposed to read anything with his name written in front of it, with Donut clarifying he meant just the lines, not the blocking, although that should have been obvious. Donut then angrily accuses Caboose of ruining his big debut play, thinking people were actually caring about it anyway, leading Caboose to calmly respond that he didn't think he and Donut were meshing artistically, suggesting that he thought Donut should talk to his agent, foolishly thinking he actually had one. Griff then butted in, complaining how stupid the play was, and that he quit, unable to stand it anymore, with Donut angrily demanding that Griff couldn't quit, bitterly stating, "End scene, this has been a Franklin Donut short." Unsure how to continue what had turned into a train wreck, Sarge decides to just tell Tucker straight up what happened, or at least the conclusion they came to, calling him son, not literal, and instructing him to listen up, before reminding him that he and Church, who we call Tucker's friend, set off a bomb that when combined with Lopez's weather machinery, created an explosion so large that it destroyed the present. Tucker, knowing how obviously stupid that was, questioned where they were if they destroyed the present, with Simmons stupidly rebutting that they were in the future, calling Tucker numbnuts. Tucker, being the only one making sense, questioned how they weren't just in the present right now, arguing that they should always be in the present, with Simmons denying the logic and pure disbelief, suggesting to Griff that Tucker simply couldn't cope with the loss, and was in denial, so was making up nonsense, with Griff agreeing, stating how sad that was, and Sarge accusing Tucker of simply not listening, reiterating his assumption he thought he was obvious that the present was destroyed and no longer, and they were in the future. Tucker could only yell in frustration and disbelief, stating how that made no sense, hoping someone else would agree. Donut tried to comfort Tucker by stating that he was working on a short film to explain it, lying that he had Tom Cruise read the script, bragging that he was very interested. Tucker, wanting to hear a more concrete reason for everyone's adamant belief in being sent into the future, tried questioning them once again if they were really telling him a bomb sent them into the future. Simmons confirmed, reasoning in an obvious smart-ass tone, tired of explaining, that luckily since Church was facing forward when the bomb went off, and everyone else was standing in front of him, that sent them all forward into the future. Tucker, not on board with the evidence, rebuttals that Church would of course be facing forward, questioning what other way a person could possibly face, leading Simmons to clarify that's what he meant by luckily. Tucker then pivoted his question to what happened to Church, with Sarge, after deliberating for 1 second, admitted that they never really thought about him. Simmons simply remarked it was a weird situation, but just shrugged it off, stating he guessed he was dead. Sarge, wanting to believe another Blue was dead, stated that assumption sounded good to him, suggesting they go with that. Tucker, pissed by the Reds' ability to shrug this off, warned that Church could potentially be hurt and trapped in the present, only for Sarge to once again entirely reiterate that that was impossible, since the present didn't exist anymore, arguing that what Tucker was proposing just simply wasn't good science, which was ironic due to what everyone else was suggesting. Tucker then urgently urged them to see the evidence for what he was saying about Church, questioning how they didn't, explaining that if Church facing forward blew them forward into the future, that could mean Church was blown backwards, only realizing what that meant as he said it, cutting himself off by worriedly stating, "Oh no." Sarge, confused, questioned what Church was sent backwards into, suggesting a wall or a broom closet, followed by Griff suggesting a big rock, and Caboose eagerly suggesting another big rock. Tucker denied all of these suggestions, confirming he thought Church was blown into the past. Meanwhile, Church shouted what the hell, questioning where the hell he was, inside an unknown location with rock, lava, a stone wall, and orange crates filmed inside the 16-color pixelated game Marathon, now wearing Marathon armor which was black boots, gray spandex with blue trim, and a gray helmet with a gray visor.